I am super excited to have Grace here with us today. She has been a community campaigner and organizer for quite some time, and she will take us through what the differences are between mobilizing, organizing, and advocacy. And I'm super excited to hear your presentation. And I feel like even though I've been doing this work for quite a while, I could not accurately explain to you the differences. So I feel like I'll be learning a lot here as well. Yeah, so thank you so much for being here, and I'll pass it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Vera. Okay, let's get into slideshow mode, folks. Welcome, Elliot. Good to see you. All right. So, start with some intros, and then we'll get into it. So who am I? No Ingarangi, no Kōtarana o ki tipuna, ko te papaioia te whenua tipu called Grace Newton-aho. So I come from Norfolk, England on my dad's side, and on my mum's side I come from Scotland. I'm a McPherson and a McIntyre, and I was born and raised in Palmy, and now I live in Whangarei with my wife Ahi Lapalapa and our daughter Hokuloa, and we live with my mother-in-law Mel, whose living room I'm in at the moment because the lighting's way better in here than down our side of the house. So yeah, that's her nice art on the wall behind me. Shout out to anybody from Whangarei, that's all Palmy, that's beaming in today. Yeah, so a bit about me. So I'm the campaigns manager at Action Station, and I sort of, the meandering road that got me to this mahi that I'm in at the moment, started politically with the Tamaki Housing Group through sort of 2009. For about 7 to 10 years, I was a part of that group. That's why I grew up politically. That's why I learned how to do community organising and the fight back against John Key's assault on state housing in that area. And so that's where I learned most of what I know about politics today. And I went from there to the trade union movement, and from there over to Action Station where I am now. So I work with the campaigns team to roll out our sort of internal campaigns. And yeah, so that takes me to Action Station. So who are we? We are, many of you will be familiar or somewhat familiar. The organisation has two main branches. One is to run our own campaigns. And so that's the active ones we have at the moment is Dental for All, public housing futures with a corresponding sort of renters union project, and Together for Te Tiriti, which I'm sure most of you have had some encounter with over the past year, hopefully, which is now kind of evolving into the Māori Wards campaign. And yeah, we do a bit of rapid response work and a few sort of standalone collaborations and stuff like that. That's one branch of the organisation. The other branch is our Action Station, as Vera has described, and the purpose of OAS is to build up the capacity of people organising in their communities, running campaigns. People usually venture into OAS via making a petition, and then come out of it hopefully with fully fledged campaigns or something ongoing locally where they make change. So this is a part of OAS's core mahi. And I really encourage you, if you don't have a campaign running, to consider coming along to the next. I'm already promoting the next Skillshare. This is a bit premature, but come along to the next Skillshare, which will be about actually turning some of these learnings from today into a strategic plan to make change where you're at. So if you haven't introduced yourself in the chat, please do so. This is going to be a little bit of me just talking at you for the next like 45 minutes. So apologies if it gets too boring, but settle in, put your feet up, have a feed. And we've set aside an hour and a half, but actually, as I said, I think it'll take about 40 minutes and then we'll have some partai. So should have this wrapped by about 1, so you can get back to whatever important things you've been doing today. And yeah, just a mihi to everybody who's on the call. You know, things are pressed right now. We're in a world that's in turmoil. And, you know, all we can do in these moments is sort of like square up our shoulders to the realities of what we're facing and try and figure out what we can do to make a change. And hopefully some of these tools will, you'll be able to add to your kit to help you make that change in this world, so that we can have something better for ourselves and our babies, because yeah, Lord knows things need to change. So ka pai, mihi ana kia koutou katoa, for coming along. So all right, let's get into it. And I'll try and go at pace, but if you have a burning partai, you can put it in the chat. Otherwise, we'll have sort of a reflection time midway through, or question time at the end. And of course, we're here to answer any questions or have any further conversations sort of after this session as well. So if you're mulling over something, you can't figure out how to articulate it, no pressure. We're here ongoing. So yeah, cool. All right, let's get into it. So what we're hoping you will get out of this session today is a deeper understanding of different approaches to change making and how to apply this to what you're doing. Some clarity on terms you've probably heard and used in progressive work, and some ideas for next steps for your campaign or projects. Honestly, I think if you come away with this with a bit more clarity on definitions, like I'm happy, I think. Yeah. So we'll talk a bit about power, and then we'll go through these sort of terms that get used frequently in our movements. And then I'll talk through a couple of examples that make me excited and inspired, and then a bit more on next steps. Some of this is going to make no sense, and that's fine. I think yeah, a lot of this learning happens through making mistakes. And this isn't going to be totally clear cut. You're not going to leave this with like a boom, boom, boom. And that's okay. You know, I think just like osmosis can do a bit of the work as well. And also on the different side of the coin, I'm sure for many of you, this is actually going to be like somewhat elementary. So bear with me if that's the case. I know I can see some people in the chat who have a bit more experience than me in these areas as well. So yeah, wherever you're landing with it is fine. A lot of talk about political change is very mysticized and hard to get your head around. That's because it's complicated, winning is hard, and we don't win a lot. And I think I spent a lot of my early sort of activism years with this anxiety that I wasn't doing things right. And I don't think that anxiety is a helpful feeling. I think that if we can turn that into sort of a hunger for knowledge and learning and progressing our craft, that's a much more helpful feeling. So if it does feel mystical and confusing, I just want to encourage you to not let that evoke anxiety or stress about what you're doing. You know, all we can do is give it our best crack and learn through doing, and then take lessons from situations like this, you know? So I kind of wish somebody had told me that in my early years as an organizer. So yeah. Well, if you take one thing away from today, I think it's about intention. So when you're running your campaign or project, it's like knowing why you're doing something. The best way to burn out is to do things on a bit of a mouse wheel without a clear reason for doing them. And I don't think that means that we shouldn't experiment sometimes and just act when we feel like we need to act. But it does mean if we have intention, if we know, if we have some strategic reasoning behind the things that we're doing, that's going to help us act with purpose and not burn out. I'm sure you can all relate to that in different areas of your mahi. Yeah, so it didn't work. Okay, all right, into power. So what is power? This is obviously a big philosophical conversation, but basically the way I'm using it today is through the context of talking about building power. And so power is the ability to make things happen basically. There's an organizer called Saul Alinsky who has some good writing and practicing about organizing. He's from the US. Basically, if you meet somebody who's been trained in this kind of broad-based community organizing stream that Alinsky founded, they will tell you that power is about the ability to mobilize people and resources to achieve a desired outcome. And so what does it mean to build power in the context of change making? Building power is building up what is needed to force something to happen. For example, I've got an example here, like the difference between narrative change and building power. So like, I think often people might be sitting around stressing about an issue or something and say, oh man, we just need to change the narrative. We just need to change the narrative. But if we peel that back a little bit, what is changing the narrative doing to actually changing the issue that needs to be changed or the system that needs to be changed, right? I think it's a good example to put that against building power, which would be identifying the different things that need to be changed or convinced to switch something to happen. So building power is not a metaphor. It's a concrete concept about what needs to actually happen for something to change. And everyday people, there's a quote from a trade unionist that I really love called Jane McAlevey. And she says, everyday people have one simple access to power in this world, and that's like the numbers. So that's our access to power as each other, right? So particularly organizing is about how we harness that and use it. So I'm going to get into some definitions now. So we're going to do campaigning, then advocacy, then mobilizing, then organizing. So what is a campaign? A campaign is a sustained effort towards a specific outcome. That effort is driven by a strategy. So it's like strategy within which are tactics that lead you to achieving your goal, your campaign goal. So I guess the main distinction I want to make between campaigns and like movements. So we might have like the movement for prison abolition, for example, and within that you might have groups that are running campaigns to shut down a prison or to I don't know, some other specific goal, some other legislation, get rid of the three strikes law or something like that. That would be the campaign within a movement. So it's just, I think that distinction's important for people. So usually it's about two different things, usually both at the same time, either winning or building up your group, your numbers, people's experience, your community. Usually organizing, advocacy, and mobilizing are employed as approaches as part of campaigns. So you'll put together an organizing strategy, and within that you'll use approaches, either organizing, advocacy, or mobilizing, or maybe a mixture of the two. And this is where it gets a little bit layered, but organizing can be employed as part of a campaign, but it might also be a campaign might be employed as part of a bigger organizing project. And hopefully by the end of today, you'll know what I mean by that. I'll give an example, which will sort of hopefully help us conceptualize that a bit more. But yeah, that's basically what a campaign is. And then advocacy is, say, the first one is advocacy. So the way that within this framework of understanding political work and activism, the term advocacy refers to charities or professionals working on behalf of people to achieve wins. So usually through negotiations or lobbying. And some key things which will help you understand if something is advocacy is people power isn't used to achieve wins in real terms. People might sign on to something, they might sign a petition or sign on to share something, but they don't actually feel any ownership over the campaign. They're not actually being brought into the campaign in any real meaningful way. If you want to do a campaign, start to finish, on your own or on behalf of a group of people, you're taking an advocacy approach. So Some examples are sometimes trade unions and usually charities or social service providers. So I'll use a trade union example for each of these things because I think it's the most clear cut. But basically, a trade union employing an advocacy approach looks like basically union members pay their dues, and when there's an issue in the workplace, an organizer comes in, meets with the boss, and gets it sorted out. So the members are paying their dues, they're getting a service, it's sometimes called a servicing model, and that's advocacy work, basically. And an interesting thing that I've learned coming into the NGO sort of world is that the term advocacy gets used a lot by people to actually talk about like political campaigning, activism, and like change-making work. And I just wanted to mention this because I didn't realize that until a colleague of mine brought it up after a funding hui we had. Like a lot of funders use the term advocacy to talk about when they're like funding more political groups. And so I just want to add that in because I think people probably come across that. But if you're using this kind of I think it's a misuse of the term basically. But it gets used, so it's good to know that that's what happens. So when you might want to use advocacy in an approach, if you're a social service provider, if you have an idea and you want to pay people to see it through, if you want to address an immediate need, but potentially not the structural reasons the need exists. So, supporting people to get access to what they need. Usually it's quite a big undertaking. Usually groups that are performing that kind of work don't also have the time to go, nose to nose with corporations who are profiting off our impoverishment, right? So it's like, in many cases, an organization is completely focused on advocacy. But I think it's especially important if you want to do a campaign to know when things might be leaning over into advocacy. Because if you want to do something, for example, like build up people power, it might not be the right approach. So the next one is mobilizing. This is the most common approach used in campaigning in Aotearoa. I'd be interested if people have reflections on that comment, actually. But basically, it's getting people out on the streets, getting people taking action. It's events focused. It's turning out numbers without people having much buy-in or input. And turnout is usually driven by social media or sort of like perfecting the message, or, it's just getting the people out there. So one way of thinking about it is mobilizing is activating the base. The same, and one marker of mobilizing is we see the same faces. It's the same sort of people coming along to different events. People take action, but are often usually attendees, not actually feeding into decisions and strategy. And often it's symbolic action. So it's, you want to make a statement about a certain thing, or it might be used to show as a show of force, as a show of power. Because you've got the numbers. But so for the trade union example, a mobilizing approach is getting workers out to an event that doesn't actually have much power or leverage behind it, right? So it's getting people out to Parliament Lawn to say, hey, we're really pissed off about this thing, or getting people out to a rally, something like that. That's mobilizing the base. The Fast Track March is a really good example of a big mobilization in the last couple of years. And I think so, yeah, when you might want to use mobilizing, big show of force, big burst of energy. And I think that can be really strategic sometimes. Like, actually, we just need to get people out. We need to come together. We need to stomp our feet. Like, we need to mobilize the base. Capture media is a good one. So sometimes mobilizations are like pretty much completely focused on capturing media, which is fine if that is part of the strategy, yeah. And now we move into organizing. So if mobilizing is activating or getting the base out onto the streets, mobilizing is expanding the base and sort of deepening the involvement of the base. So organizing, I'm going to talk a lot about organizing, but really it's quite simple. It's this top sort of section here. It's in-person conversations, it's leader development, it's building relationship, and all of that creates base expansion. And to do that, we need to talk to people who don't agree with us already. And then we do all of that to build the power that we need to win. So another marker of organizing is that people take part in planning and executing events and tactics as part of a strategy to win. And so a good trade union example again, to top us off is, so rather than just doing things on behalf of people or getting people along to something, it's working with the workers to build the power needed to create the leverage to make the change, to force the boss to make the change, yeah? And as part of that process, the workers who are a part of that upskill become more and more involved and learn how to get their colleagues involved to further organize. So yeah, best example is strike action that wins. You know, like getting people to show up to a meeting is one thing, or a rally or whatever. Getting people to take the step of taking a risk together requires relationship building. It requires developing people to be able to lead their colleagues and their comrades. And so, yeah, that's sort of like, that's the kind of organizing route that some unions might want to take. And there's a lot of arguments that we need our trade unions to be taking that approach more because our union movement needs power to win, so that we don't let governments take the absolute piss like they are now. And I would say, like, on that, you know, like we have seen, I don't want to get too controversial. We've seen a dip in union organizing because it takes a lot of resourcing. It's hard. But there are a lot of people who are working really hard day in, day out to do this work with very little resourcing because of the attacks, the onslaught on the union movement over the last couple of decades. So yeah, I just want to make that note. Another example would be a tenants union, similar thing, you know, people getting together and saying, hey, actually the rent's too high. We don't have any tenants unions in Aotearoa at the moment, unfortunately, right now. But, you know, going door to door, getting people involved, saying we're not actually going to pay rent until we have these concessions, or, you know, sort of exercising power by getting people involved. And Justice for Palestine Wellington, I'm sure there's people who mentioned in the chat they're involved. I think it's a really great example of community organizing in Aotearoa, and I'm actually going to give a bit more detail about that in a minute. So yeah, how's my pacing, Vera? I'm not going too fast, am I? Okay, cool. Alrighty. So an example of an organizing process might be, and this is from if many unionists in the call, like this is from Jane McAlevy's, I think it's No Shortcuts, I think. She's got a few books out. She's a really really onto it trade union organizer from the States who passed away sadly last year. But she uses this as an example. I think is really helpful. So this chart that you can see here is from a ward and in a hospital where she was working with nurses who are union members. And basically they were trying to get I think it was like ratios, like trying to get their ratios sorted out so the hospital would hire more nurses basically. And it's like a for-profit hospital. Really hard to win disputes. So basically they came together and the first step of the process was mapping. So this is with the people who are really interested to begin with. Map the people that are needed to win. And so in their case, they decided they needed everyone on the ward. Like if they had everybody on the ward, the boss has no choice, right? Second step is figure out how to talk to them, all of them. And that means, as a part of that, seeking out the people that people listen to. in the workplace. So sometimes that gets called seeking out organic leaders. And so it's like getting them on board, and then talking to every single person. And while you're doing that, you're charting your progress. So basically every sticker you can see in this chart is a level of commitment by each person on the ward. So they wanted to get people to a certain level of commitment. And that's when they knew that they would have the power that they were needed to win, right? So chart the progress. Once you get to a point, so in this case, once they get to the point where they think they've got everybody, it's time to test out that power, right? So you do a structure test. So a structure test could be many different things. It could be an event where you test like the turnout of who's coming along, or it could be you test the commitment of people through something kind of scary and challenging. So it might be like, I'll put your photo on this photo wall in the middle of the workplace, and the boss can see it, the boss can see everybody. And if you get everybody, then your structure test is passed. Yeah? You have like, sometimes it gets called a supermajority, but basically the structure test tests the power. If it feels like you have the power needed to win, that's when you take action. And so the whole reason for this is it's using a method to build power and knowing that you're going to win. And the action needed in this case was a strike, and they won this dispute simply because you can't. What's the boss going to do? Every single worker on the floor is off, and I mean that's why getting nurses off the floor. I don't know if there's any NZNO organisers in the chat. I haven't organised with nurses specifically. I've organised with care workers, but basically like that requires a lot of conversation and trust, and it requires people to take quite a big step because they're walking away from patients basically. It's for the good of. So they're having these really hard conversations with people about the long-term benefits, people getting on board with that. But yeah, so that's an example of an organizing process. And with that, I'm going to move us into something that's maybe a bit more relevant to, I think there's probably more community-based organizers on the call doing community campaigns. So I've come up with a example, which will hopefully give a bit of feel for how this might be used in the community. So like I said before, organizing can also be employed as an approach. So yeah, campaigns can be used within organizing projects, but also organizing can be used as an approach within a campaign. And this is an example of a campaign using mobilizing and then switching tack and using organizing. Okay, so right, just use our imaginations. So there's a mining company called Jones's Digging, and they want to build a gold mine in Foxton. Some locals think that's mad and want to stop it. They decide to start a campaign, stop the mine. The campaign goal is to stop the mine. They do a petition, hold a couple of educational events, and turn out people, sort of everybody who's on their side already, out to a few protests. So they mobilize their community. Greenpeace even gets wind of it. And some paid activists come to town and do a stunt. So there's a bit of advocacy in there as well. And eventually the hype actually pressures the local MP to pull the permit. The group wins their campaign to stop the mine. Alas, 3 years later, the company returns, equipped with another permit and with the support of the newly elected local MP, whose party received a healthy donation from the company over the election period. They begin work on the mine immediately. The old group click into action and run a protest, which is well attended, but the company and the MP just don't care. They have the backing of many in the community who just got good jobs through the mining project. So power wasn't built through the last campaign to sustain that win. And that's the situation they're in. So the activists in town regroup and decide to run another campaign, but this time not to just mobilize, but to also take an organizing approach. So they develop a strategy based on a power analysis, which shows them who is needed to get on side to keep mining out of the town for good, including how many people in the town total are needed to ensure there isn't the workforce or local support for the mine to progress. So from there, after they've done that charting and mapping, they door knock every door in town. They have conversations with people about the impacts of mining, including the real world impacts of the job creation of the mine. So not shying away from those hard topics. Through the door knocking, they find that there are a couple of key people on the work site that people in the community actually look up to. So they spend a great deal of time working to bring those leaders on board. From there, they hold town halls where people debate the pros and cons and eventually work together to create a charter that outlines what sort of work people in the town do want to see. They run trainings for more people to take on intensive organizing tasks. They like running more meetings and door knockings and things like that. The trainings also encompass political economy, so deepening people's analysis of the systemic drivers of the mine project. So basically, you know, like conscientization. They eventually get a majority of people in the town along to a direct action to stop the mining machinery coming in. Different groups from around town get in behind the effort, sustaining the occupation for many days until the company decides that it isn't worth it. They hold off the mine for now. The group keeps their work going for many years. They build anti-mining into different parts of town life, from school boards to sports teams to small businesses. They form working groups to bring green jobs into the town. They get 80% of the town to sign on to the charter to be mine free. And local businesses even refuse to serve workers from the mining company. Mining companies give up on the town. And that example of local businesses refusing to serve mining workers, that's a real life example from a colleague of mine, Action Station from the Coromandel. It's pretty cool. The following year, one of the new green job employers tries to rip off its workforce. The solidarity built between people in the town is activated to defend the workers. They go on strike and are able to sustain the strike for many months because of town support. Eventually, the employer caves and the workers achieve their pay rise. Organizing not only built lasting power in the face of mining, but in the face of like capitalism more broadly. And so I use this example because I think it's a good one of like a campaign using an organizing approach and how it differs from like using exclusively mobilizing. And it's an organizing approach because it's focused on building lasting power through speaking to people who didn't already agree, expanding the base, forming lasting relationships, and developing leaders. Yeah, so another way of putting it is like you might have the campaign and you might employ advocacy and mobilizing, you might get the win. But the other route is to do the campaign, do organizing, and perhaps even a bit of mobilizing advocacy in there as well, and then building power and then getting the campaign win and holding on to it. Yeah. So I did want to when I put this together, I thought we might be like seeing each other so we could have a conversation, but I did want to give an opportunity, like a couple of minutes for people to write into the chat if this has raised anything for you in your experience of campaigning, or if you've got any experience of campaigns that relate to any of these examples that I've been through so far.
Awesome. I'll just give people some time to add in any experiences that they want to share or questions. We do have 2 questions from before that maybe we could answer now. And so the first one is from someone in the chat, and it is encouraging people to make a submission on a bill considered mobilizing?
Good question. I would say, and I want to be clear, I'm not like there's lots of different takes on this, but within my understanding, yes, I think it's a really good example of mobilizing actually. And then you might think, well, what's the organizing route to take with submissions? And that might be through talking to people who might not be reached by whatever it was that reached you to make the submission that might not be reached by that. So trying to talk to people in that area about making their own submission would be taking an organizing approach. Or forming community hui where people talk a bit more about the issue, and so sort of deepening their understanding together and deepening their capacity to sort of broaden the base of people who are going to make a submission, if that makes sense. But yeah, it's great. Great example of mobilizing, yeah. Some great comments coming in. Can you say a bit more about advocacy and how it's done? So I think the main takeaway from this today is advocacy, in effect, is doing something on behalf of people rather than building them up to do it themselves. So yeah, lobbying, negotiating. You might run projects or events, but you're not really bringing in people to build people power, because if you were, that would be more on the mobilizing or organizing side of things. But yeah, having an event to say like, look at this great thing we've done, but nobody who's attending was actually a part of making it happen, that would be an advocacy event. And I'm saying that actually not even as a criticism, like Action Station does that, like sometimes. Yeah, it just depends on what the strategy is and what you're trying to do. Yep, shout out to Taranaki for the organizing happening there, totally agree. Base building. Yes, quick tips for building a base from scratch. Not a very big community. I think it kind of relates to Erin's kōrero down the second one, which is like the best way to build a base is to talk to people and build relationships with people, especially if it's not a very big community and you have the ability to talk to everybody. And a good way to start that process is to think about the people that people look up to and get them on side first, and it might be that you could have two approaches in this way. It could be that you want to base build around an issue that people might care about. That the only way to do that is to make sure people actually do care about it. If it's like super niche, that's going to be really hard. Or you can do some base building before you even pick a campaign issue, which is that's the kind of Saul Alinsky approach, which is a little different to my training, but that's where you basically get community leaders all together and you say, hey, actually, if we join forces, we can make some real positive change here, and you sort of base build that way, bring along their congregations and stuff. But I would say that's getting a bit overcomplicated. I would say like it's no shortcuts, it's talking to people and figuring out how to talk to them. And it is scary, as Erin points out, like it's one of the hardest things to do, is to interface with people when you're not sure how the conversation's going to go. It's hard. People are unpredictable. Conversations are unpredictable. And the only way to do it is practice, basically. But there are some ways of drawing people in. Otherwise, like the first thing is, I think if you're not selling something and you're not trying to get people's votes, people are quite receptive to you knocking on their door, especially if you're talking about an issue that they care about or that relates to them. So I wouldn't underestimate the power of that. I had that experience a few weeks ago of housing. Like people were really keen to chat about what they're going through. So yeah, scared. Okay. And I think also like you learn to have these sorts of conversations in organizations, and we simply don't have loads and loads of those in Aotearoa at the moment where people can learn or be trained to organize. So a lot of it has to just be learning by doing. And so I think that's where there's a bit of a gap there too, Erin. So Kevin says, I expect getting people mobilized in the first place. Yeah, I mean, that might be part of the strategy. It might be getting people out. Or you might want to do some organizing, try and build up your numbers first, and then get people out, you know. It depends on how you want to build your strategy. Totally agree. Okay, got a question about art. I'm going to put that one on ice because I think I might go too tangential with that, but great question there, Pachali. Thank you.
We could probably answer that at the end of the presentation.
Yeah, good idea. Yeah. Let's move from mobilizing to organizing. Burning it all down. Okay, so I'm just looking at the final question, folks. So I found a lot of people think that burning it all down is the answer and taking direct disruptive actions. But there's no long-term strategy or plan to bring in new people. There's no point lobbying because who won't give a shit. You know, we're cutting off people who don't agree with them. Is this a lost cause? I mean, yeah, I think this is a tale as old as time. Like, especially when people feel strongly about something, it feels like action just needs to be taken now. And I think patience and strategy, it is best learnt through experience. And so, yeah, I'm sure everybody can relate to what Stacey's put there. Any tips on how to convince people? I think, yeah, for lots of people, yeah, for lots of people, that's the sort of thing that you have to learn experientially. So you learn, you might learn after a few, you know, you might hold a few rallies. It's the same people coming every week. It doesn't feel like you're progressing any closer to a goal, or growing or building power. Then people might be more curious to try other approaches. I think that's one way. And then the other way is just like group learning, you know, like I learned a lot of this stuff with colleagues and friends, reading stuff, seeing what's happening elsewhere or in organizations. So yeah. Okay, thank you. All right, last one from Wiramu. Door knocking is more effective, both of them pretty depressing. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah. No, good experience here from Wiramu. Yeah, kia ora for that. Okay. All right, I'll get back into the sort of second wee bit and then we'll have a bit of time for partai. Okay. So I did have the second half of this was going to be again quite dry and about how to put organizing into your campaign strategy. But I had a chat to Vera and Vera's colleague Ruby, and they are going to do a strategy session as the next Skillshare. So I actually pulled back from there, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about like things that I think are cool because so we can end on like a kind of like vibey note. So the first one that I think is cool is the Bus Riders Union in LA. So and I know about this from a book that I read by a guy called Eric Mann, who I digress. We're going to send that book out actually, well, a link to it after this, so you can have a read if you're interested. But basically, Bus Riders Union is a group in LA, and they build power by recruiting people on the bus, which seems simple when you hear it, but like you don't really see it much. Basically, organizers and members ride the bus with their t-shirts on. They speak with passengers in different languages. They listen to their concerns, and they recruit them there on the spot. And they might be, you know, flyering or petitioning as part of a campaign, which is within their organizing effort, or they're just doing recruitment. The BRU holds regular multilingual meetings that are democratic, accessible, using popular education techniques to build political consciousness and leadership among members. These meetings serve as hubs for strategizing actions, planning campaigns, and collectively making decisions. Their consistent presence in communities and commitment to rider-led organising has made BRU a powerful force in transit justice. And I will add to this, like, the meetings are focused on like community strength. And so big focus on food and getting together and people feeling a part of it, you know, or not just feeling a part of it, people being it, people driving the union itself. So And I will add, like, this is a little bit old school. A couple of these examples are quite old school, but I think this is quite a strong victory. So basically, they won. One of their first and biggest wins was the 96 Civil Rights Consent Decree. And so they got these really significant wins for bus riders in the city. They got prices cut. They got their weekly pass. They froze cash fares for 2 years. They got new buses, and they got investment in the buses themselves. And so this led to a 20% boost in ridership and a major shift in regional transit funding priorities. So it basically turned the dial for bus riders in the city. Yeah, so that's the Bus Riders Union. And another one I have, a local one, so I know some of you are involved in, is Justice for Palestine. So Justice for Palestine is a democratic membership-based organisation based in Pōneke that works to promote, I think they've got a branch in Otaki now, may or may not be correct. It works to promote justice, freedom, equality, and self-determination for the Palestinian people. J4P has used organising techniques in its overall strategy for many years, focusing on organisation, power building, and member development. So some example from the last couple of years is the strong ties that the organisation has built with Mana Whenua and with allied Jewish groups to form a powerful bloc. So spending that time developing those relationships, not just calling on people to come when there's an event, right? So there's a big difference there. Focusing on training people in both civil disobedience and marshalling and things like that, but also in organising techniques. So through their campaigns, they get people to learn to do things like phone banking, or they run trainings. So people are coming through the organisation and they're actually upskilling, and that increases their capacity to further organise. And that's why their base is able to grow and be sustained, rather than it just be people kind of show up in waves. And yeah, I guess like J4P is an example of the importance of member organizations in the face of extreme violence and urgency when it comes to political action, you know, like having this kind of like rock in the ocean that's sort of holding true to some of these key things, rather than just having outbursts of action. I think is a really important example that we have here. And so shout out to all the J4P members on the call, and anybody who's here that was involved in starting that organization. And then the last one, this is really old school, but I used this in a renters union meeting the other day, and I just love it. I think it's great. So basically, at the beginning of World War I, Glasgow shipyards were used for shipbuilding, weird sentence. Glasgow shipyards got really, really busy because they needed to build way more ships for the war. So the demand was high, and there was an influx of people to the area. So the landlords of the city were organised. They got together, much like the landlords in this country are organised. They got together and decided to exploit the situation and put up their rents. And so in response, local women formed the group, the Glasgow Women's Housing Association. So they door knocked and held meetings and built up this huge membership, and eventually called a rent strike. And yeah, they started a bailiff protection system, which made sure nobody was evicted. So basically, they got people to withhold rent, and then when the bailiffs came to the door, they ran them out of their communities, basically. And I like this story, that at one point they would pelt the bailiffs with flour bombs and other foodstuffs to stop them actually evicting people. And at its peak, 20,000 people were rent striking in the city, which forced the government to pass a rent control law. So big one for the Glasgow Women's Housing Association. So the organising process that I've outlined in each of these cases builds lasting power, because at its core, it grows the base in a meaningful way, because it makes people the change itself, not just instruments for change. It makes people directly involved in a win, making it harder to take away because people own it. And with that, okay, it's a little dense, but basically, as I've said, the campaign strategy, who is coming up. And I think as part of it, there are a few questions that you can chuck in when you're developing your strategy. But you don't have to screenshot this or remember this because you'll learn about this next time. But basically, it's building in this sort of power analysis, like what sort of power is needed to win or click into action to win. And how can this campaign build lasting power? Like how can relationships be formed and leaders be trained, and our community be strengthened, you know? So I'm going to skip forward because I feel like I've been talking too much, way too much. But in conclusion, so to recap, organizing in essence is getting serious about building power, in-person conversations, leader development, building relationships, talking to people who don't agree with us. We're never ever going to win if we keep just talking to people who agree with us. And all of that means base expansion, right? And then the sort of what I started with was all of this, understanding all of this is about having intention when running your campaign and knowing why you're doing something. I think there's a stream of campaigning in Aotearoa, which is like well-funded and loses a lot and follows kind of like this sort of, I think we're all guilty of it. Like, it's like, I feel like I should do this. I feel like I should do that. Don't really know why. Don't really know why strategically it makes sense. We just do it anyway. And it's kind of like, and we keep losing. And I think so if we can use some of these tools to help us think critically about what we're doing and why, and put that into strategy, we're going to be better off. So, and then, but the last thing, take all of that with a grain of salt. Don't let perfect get in the way of good. Try stuff out, get it wrong, and go hard. Like, that's all you can do. I think, yeah, I think there's a tendency also to try and get things exactly right or feel like you're not the right person to be doing something in the specific moment. And maybe, I think that's a good question to ask. Like, you know, maybe you're not the right person, but usually you are, and nobody else is going to do it. So give it a go, you know? And lastly, after this session, we will send out the link for something. No, the next I don't know why I didn't finish that sentence. The next the next OS thing. We'll send out the campaign strategy worksheet, maybe, or maybe that'll be after the next Skillshare, actually, sorry. And some recommended reading for the nerds. So I'll send out some Jane McAlevey stuff, this book that I think is really great, and a video, if video is more your thing. And that is us. So I might just go back over to the chat. Thank you if you're still here.
I love that. Thank you so much, Grace. Also, there's no such thing as talking too much when this is such an important topic. So you're all good. Yeah, we do have 4 questions in the Q&A box that I think we have some time to answer. So the first one is from Sandy, which is it possible to incorporate advocacy into organizing? For example, upskilling people in community to advocate for themselves or others. Any tips? And then she also mentioned we still need an ambulance at the bottom of the cliff in addition to addressing root causes.
Yep, I think there's a couple of things to say there. I think I totally agree. I mean, I think most of the landscape of work at the moment is doing that ambulance at the bottom of the cliff work. So I think there's 2 approaches there. With housing organizing, I'll use as an example, advocacy is used as a tool to draw people in. And I don't mean that in a culty way, although that is kind of how it sounds. But basically, like, you know, if people are coming in and they want support with something, actually, no, it wouldn't be like, I think, actually, no, I'm going to wind that back because the organizing approach would be for people to work with other members of the group to figure out how to address the issues that they're facing collectively. So that would be taking the sort of this direct need, but turning it into an organizing exercise. I think if there is a big interest in trying to address a direct need, often that's fine, but you can't do everything as well, you know? So I think it's resisting this urge to try and be everything to everybody. Because like, you know, it's like doing that thing of like, I don't know, if you have a slogan that everybody's got to love, then like it's kind of meaningless, you know, or like, I don't know if that's the best example, but basically you can't do everything. So I think it's okay to see needs when you're trying to make a change, to see all these different needs. But I actually think the challenge is being laser focused on what you're trying to do and what your strategy is. Argenia radically change our colonial Westminster governing system, and there's something more in keeping with Māori Ke Mai. I mean, I'm not super qualified to answer this part-time, but I certainly hope so. I certainly hope that's the future we're pacing towards. And I think, yeah, there's definitely thousands of examples of really strong Māori and Hapu-led community organising, which I didn't get into today because I don't have the expertise to speak to them. But yes, I certainly hope so. What's the most effective way to fund campaigning organising? Nisha, good question. So this is a good question. I think if you're doing something community-led, like having community money is like the best way to go. There is an example of Alinsky style organising again, which like I'm less involved with. I take a sort of a different approach, but they use this term called hard money and soft money. And hard money is basically like, well, soft money is basically like funding from institutions or the government, something like that. Like it's sort of like it's kind of like almost meaningless in a way, but there's like this I'm sorry, I don't mean to a lot of our campaigns are funded by grants and things like that, just for clarity. But basically there's another line of thought which is like members should fund and own their campaigns. So campaigns shouldn't be shouldn't be an owing to big funding organizations or charities or the government and things like that, because it compromises the politics and ultimately people don't have ownership over it. So that hard money is where members actually hand over the cash, you know, like it's a part of having ownership over your organization or your movement. So one of the things that the bus riders union do is they have that when they recruit people hand over $1. And it might seem like weird and transactional to us because we're not really used to being paid like member organizations, but basically the whole idea is they become a dollar member. And that's the act of handing over that $1 is like, I actually believe in this. I'm going to take ownership for it. I'm going to be a part of funding it. So, yeah. I would encourage, I think most people starting stuff up to try and work out how to do stuff without getting external money if organizing is the approach that they want to take. Awesome, Rangi Māori. I'm noticing an issue about burnout within our base, so it is hard to move from mobilizing to organizing. Will it take advocacy to get more people on board to carry these organizing roles? It feels like it was running out of steam. Good question. I mean, in my experience, burnout happens when, burnout can happen in lots of ways, but in my experience, it happens when people do loads and loads of stuff and they're not really sure why, and it doesn't really feel like they're making progress. And I think moving into advocacy intentionally and away from mobilizing and organizing, I don't necessarily see that as a way of avoiding burnout. I think that's I think like if somebody is finding themselves in a social movement and they don't feel like they want to be there anymore and they need to take a break, then they should. And then they might want to go and work for a social service or do something like that. But I think otherwise, like, you know, good organizing, good community work, sort of good organizing might acknowledge that energy is low. So tone down the mobilizations and then have a chat about what a goal might be. and then what a strategy might be to get there within the capacity of the people of the group. So rather than just being like, this is too much, we can't do a rally every weekend, we might as well just give up and do something else. Like, I'm not suggesting that's what you're saying, but like, as an extreme example, rather than do that, it's like, okay, so we're rallying every weekend and we're not getting anywhere and everybody's burnt out. What is one goal that we want to achieve? And do we have the capacity to take steps intentionally towards achieving that goal? I think would probably be the better approach. Yeah, I hope that helps.
Awesome. That seems like that is our last question. We also just have Fiona Sharp in the chat saying that they're gonna try and reach out to you, and that they're glad that this was, yeah, a really insightful and reassuring webinar.
I appreciate it. Yeah, my inbox is open. It's allagrace@actionstation.org.nz. Reach out to me or Vera. I'm always keen to chat about this stuff. And if anyone's in Whangarei, just give me a buzz. Oh, question. Shall we finish? Okay, we'll finish about with the question about the arts.
Yes.
So I don't know how interesting this will be to everybody in the call, but speaking, where and how does creating art fit into all of this, especially as a solo artist? Contributing to the narrative, essential mobilizing or culture change. Okay, so I don't have a definitive answer on this, but I think one way, there's a couple of things. I think there's a couple of ways of thinking about art and social movements, and like there are these two kind of, one thing I would encourage is abandoning the contemporary art world and events-based stuff that has no real lasting impact on communities and is just about like brand building off movements. So abandoning that and then having a critical lens on like, does my art just have like political content, or is it political in its like mode? Like, so it's like my art making is the medium political? So like, what is it doing to bring people in or move people? I think those are two lenses you can use to think about art and social movements. And then the last thing I would say is that artists have always been really, really important social movements. And there's lots of different like poetic quotes about how like it's about helping people to visualize and imagine this sort of like world that we're moving towards, but also really tangible stuff like heading along to a hui and being like, does somebody need a poster designing? I spent a lot of my early activism years in the screen printing room, screen printing posters, you know, things like that. So I hope that helps as like an artist trying to work in this space. Yeah, like beautiful things are always needed, and visioning and imagining is always needed. So yeah, that's just my 2 cents on that. There's a good book by a guy called Ben Davis. I'm just going to Google it really quickly. Book. Oh yeah, that's called 9.5 Theses on Art in Class. You might enjoy that book. And that's what I'm going to finish the webinar with.
Love a good book recommendation. Honestly, we'll just add it to like the list of book recommendations we'll send you guys after this webinar as well. Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for your presentation, Grace. It was so packed with information, your knowledge, wisdom, experience. Love the examples that you shared with us as well. I think it was really interesting to see how it's all not only connected, but also like kind of intertwined, and like, yeah, having the examples, I think painted a really great picture on how like, yeah, the differences are with those approaches, and how you can, I guess, create different types of change. And yeah, so thank you everyone for also joining